I'm Abigail and welcome to my channel about everything having to do with books. Today's video is not going to be about reading but about writing, and that is for a very important reason. I finished a book that I was writing a couple of days ago and I'm so happy about it. So I'm going to be telling you all how I plot my books and what tools I use in order to make writing the first draft as easy as it can be, which writing the first draft is never easy. But here are some tools that I use to make it just a bit easier. Okay, so the first thing that I always do when I'm plotting a story is write the summary, which is basically just like a paragraph talking about everything that happens in your story, or like the setup for it. So for example, I wrote a little summary for a very popular novel, The Hunger Games, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but as you can see if you read it, it's like kind of what would be on the back of the book, if you know what I mean. Like, you don't have to know like every nitty-gritty plot point or like every single character in the book yet. Just make sure that if someone asks you what is your book about, you know what to tell them. And then what I like to do is the 3-act timeline. And this may not work for everyone. If you're someone that just likes to have like the beginning and work from there, then you can do that. I don't know how you do that. I like to plan everything. But if you are someone that likes to plan out like me, you might love the 3-act timeline. And I don't know where I found this, but I know it's a pretty popular one, so you might have heard of it. But if not, here it is. So it basically divides the story into 3 different acts. And the first act is basically everything that happens like before the main plot point. So first you have the hook, which is obviously like the thing like that happens at the beginning that makes your reader want to keep reading, and the setup for like why do we care about this, and like the inciting event and build up in the first plot point, which are basically just like the first big thing that happens and like the lead up to it, and then how like the plot begins to develop, so your readers are like, okay, I see where this is going. And then the second act is like the reaction to what happens in the first part, obviously. And then there's even more, like the plot really develops. Like there's the midpoint and like the different pinch points, which are like the most intense moments of the story, and like action. And this second pinch point right here is probably where like your character will be at their lowest point before there's like a renewed push to do like the right thing and to go through with the story. And then the third act is the resolution to your story. So you have like the third pitch point, which is like one big thing that happens after the character gets that new resolve, I forgot the word for a second, resolve to do the right thing, and then they have to recover from that. And then there's like the ultimate confrontation at the end. So whether that's like a big battle with the villain, or like confronting the person that's been bullying them the whole story, or even just like coming to terms with like grief over loss of a loved one, depending on what your story is about, and like the climactic moment and the resolution. So no matter whether or not your story has like a happy ending, if this is like the final book, or if you're just writing a book itself, or this is the final book in your series, it's going to end resolved in some way. Like you can't just cut it off in the middle of the action unless you have another book coming. And so even if it doesn't end on like a happy ending, you want the readers to like know that it's the end. So then we have the synopsis, which is like a detailed description of every major event in the plot. And this is like to help you actually write the story. So if you might not want to do this, like I said before, if you're not into like planning out every single thing that happens. But this really helps me, because when I start writing the scene, I want to know what the scene is about and where it's going and everything that happens in it. And so here I have from Wikipedia the synopsis of The Hunger Games, like I showed before. So you can see here, there's like, it talks about the setup here, which is what you want to do, and then the beginning of the story, and like the middle of the story, and then how the story ends and sets up for like the next book. And so this is pretty in-depth, and you might want to write something like this for your own story. And then the last thing that I like to do is the roadmap. And if you've written like the synopsis, the roadmap is actually pretty easy. You just divide it into scenes and chapters if you want, and like show what's going to happen in every scene. And what I like to do is something that really annoys me when I'm writing a story is when I don't know how much time has passed. Like I'll read the whole book, I'm like, I don't know if that was over a month or over a year. And something that I like to do when I'm writing a story is make it very clear how much time has passed. And so here's a little example. This is obviously very, very vague, but things that I like to do. So it's like chapter 1, you might say when it happened, when it starts, like in early January, for example. and then everything that happens in it. So like you might know that you want your character to go to their first day of school and find out that their best friend isn't in their class, and then meet someone else who will become their other best friend, or something like that. And then like you might know that the next chapter happens 3 days later, for example. And so just go through that for the whole story, this whole big synopsis that you wrote over here. And I think the synopsis is probably the most difficult part, but if you've done your work with the 3-act timeline and the summary, then that'll be actually a lot easier. And so yeah, this is the 4 things that I use to plot out my story, and you might have other things that work for you, and if they are, I would love to know what they are. So much for watching my video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, the tools that I talked about aren't going to be what works best for everyone, but these are the tools that work for me, and if you have something else that works for you, I'd love to know what it is down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I will end with a quote on reading. If you are going to get anywhere in life, you have to read a lot of books. Roald Dahl.